Welcome to Dublin Airport on what's been the busiest day in many months for those working in tourism and travel, with increased numbers of people on the move. Today saw the easing of an array of restrictions on people coming in and out of the country as Ireland joined the EU's digital COVID certificate programme. Today also saw the removal of the requirement on people arriving from the UK and the US to self-isolate, providing they have proof of vaccination or of having recovered from COVID.
It's been a long wait, but after months of uncertainty and disappointment, travel restrictions finally eased this morning, reducing the burden on the sector and those desperate to go away and get home.
Quite overwhelming. It's been a rocky road. I'm a nurse over in London, so a long time waiting to come home to mum, dad, the family and that, so just been dying for this date. So yeah, I'm just glad to be home.
Been a long year, a long year, so yeah, really great to have Emma back.
Passenger numbers at Cork Airport this week will be up nearly 100% on last week, but still down almost 90% on this week 2 years ago. Here in Dublin, 150,000 passengers are expected to use the airport this week, up 50% on last week, but down 80% on 2019 levels.
We had days here, Will, where there was literally nobody going through, a trickle of people. So it'll build from 22,000 a day through the rest of the week and into August. And we're confident that over time we will be able to build it back. I think long term it's probably a 3 to 4 year build.
After an horrific 16 months, airlines were also happy to be taking to the skies again, though they cautioned that the experience for passengers will be different.
We're very much encouraging people to do as much online in advance of travel. So check in online, drop bags at the check-in desk using the automated facilities, and give plenty of time as you go through the airport. So we're recommending 2 hours before a European flight, 3 hours before a transatlantic flight.
Ryanair also warned that Ireland's travel sector is playing catch-up and will need help.
The government here need to wake up to their own recommendations on the Aviation Task Force and actually incentivise airlines to put capacity here, because most airlines have gradually been putting capacity elsewhere.
Increased footfall is also good news for businesses in airport terminals like Marquette cafes.
There's great crowds coming in. People seem to be all in good form. They all seem to be obeying the basic rules.
And so, for this pandemic-ravaged sector, things finally look to be on the up. Will Goodbody, RTE News, Dublin Airport.
The relaxation of restrictions on arrivals from abroad has allowed people to make journeys in both directions. Some of those coming through Dublin Airport today were travelling for pleasure, but others had different reasons.
A new day with new rules. The lifting of the quarantine requirement for vaccinated people coming from the US allowed some to make a long-awaited return.
This is our 18th or 19th visit to Ireland. We've taught school here and brought students from the US to Tully Cross many times.
We hope to get on a bus and spend the night at Shannon, and then I'll rent a car and we'll drive to Tully Cross in County Galway. Stay there for 10 days and we'll feel like we came home.
Yeah, heading off to Spain. Can't wait for the family holiday.
And any worries about the paperwork and all that?
No, we've everything in order. PCR test, everything, all the forms filled in, ready to go.
But it's not all about holidays.
And as always at any airport, many of the people passing through are travelling for family reasons, both happy and sad.
My mother died last July, so they held off the funeral for me to come in.
It's a very sad thing,
yeah, sorry, it's a bit of a sad situation, but glad to be here all the same.
In departures, one new arrival was ready to take her first flight.
She was born during the pandemic time, so now we are going in Italy just to show this girl here to the family.
Oh, beautiful. And how long is it since you've seen your family?
2 years and a half, yeah. It was tough.
Many families hoping that when it comes to travel restrictions, this really is the dawning of a new era. Coleman O'Sullivan, RTE News, Dublin Airport.
Shannon Airport has been particularly badly hit by the impact of COVID on the aviation sector, with the permanent loss of its Aer Lingus cabin crew base. There's now real concern in the West and Midwest regions about the loss of transatlantic flights and fears about whether they will ever return, as our Midwest correspondent Kathy Halloran has been finding out.
International Travel Day and 8 Ryanair services are back at Shannon to the UK and Europe. But COVID's impact has been particularly harsh there, 1.3 million passengers lost, and the closure of its decades-long Aer Lingus base has sent shivers across the West and Midwest about the loss of transatlantic and Heathrow services. The Woodstock Hotel and Golf Club outside Ennis is heavily reliant on US visitors and feeling the impact.
It's absolutely critical that these guests can fly in and out of Shannon Airport. You know, this is crucial to us. And I was on Mehel and IGTUA recently, and the message loud and clear I got from there: if we cannot fly into Shannon and the west of Ireland to play golf and come and visit the Wild Atlantic Way, you have lost our business. It's gone to other countries.
Those US tourists are the lifeblood of the Keogh family chauffeur service for the past 30 years.
It is what we rely on all the time, Cathy. If we don't have international traffic coming into Shannon Airport, we're in trouble.
Shannon is now competing with airports across Europe to get services back. Strong incentives will be needed to compete with that.
The airline and the aviation world is a very competitive business. It's a global business. As I've mentioned, airports around Europe, airports around the world are incentivising airlines through reduced airport charges and other schemes such as that to start flying again. If we're not offering any such incentive, then the airlines are going to look elsewhere.
40,000 jobs depend on an economically vibrant Shannon Airport. The priority is getting services back, but there's a long recovery ahead.
It's absolutely crucial. I think it's the linchpin of this region, and that's why our absolute focus is working with our airline partners to restore that critical connectivity for both business and tourism.
Even the most optimistic forecasts say Shannon Airport will need state incentives and supports up to 2024 at least, and possibly till 2029. Can it survive the COVID collapse? Many say it's simply too important to the wider region not to. Cathy Halloran, RTE News, Shannon Airport.
Well, I'm joined now by our business editor, Will Goodbody. Will, they're talking about a relatively busy day today, but it's relative to almost no business over recent months. It's going to take a long time for the sector to recover, isn't it?
Yeah, David, I think you can see from our reports this evening two themes emerge. I mean, the first is optimism and hope and relief. I've been out here at Dublin Airport quite a lot over the last 16 months covering this crisis, and it really has been an extraordinarily eerie, quiet, desolate place at times. And so, you know, it's positive to see some of that activity returning, albeit at quite a low level. Those passengers we spoke to today were happy enough to be flying again. They were happy enough with the processes and procedures that have been put in place. And certainly those working in the sector are also relieved to be back working, doing what it is they do again, and to have that rebuilding process start. And that brings me to the second theme, which is this long road ahead, I think, that faces this sector as a whole, in terms of the number of flights that took place into and out of Irish airports in the first half of the year. They were down 62% compared to the same period in 2019. So it's really starting from a very low base, and airlines can't just turn that capacity back on overnight. It is going to take time. It's going to take time for the confidence to return among consumers and demand to return. It's also going to we're going to need to see some of that uncertainty disappear that is out there as well. But at least we are seeing a return to normality coming.
It's not compulsory for travelling, but is designed to make it easier. From today, for those arriving here from countries within the EU and these 4 countries, there is no need to quarantine if you have proof of being fully vaccinated, have recovered from COVID in the past 180 days, or have had a negative PCR test within 72 hours of landing. For arrivals from Britain and the US, the rules are slightly different. If you have valid proof of vaccination or recovery, no testing or quarantine is needed. However, if you don't, then you must present a negative PCR test, self-quarantine for 14 days, and if you get a negative test result on day 5 onwards, then your quarantine ends. And what about travelling with children? From today, those aged between 12 and 17 are required to have a negative PCR result unless they have valid proof of vaccination or recovery. Those under 12 don't need a test. Children of any age travelling with accompanying vaccinated or recovered adults will not be required to self-quarantine post-arrival. However, where an accompanying adult needs to self-quarantine, then all children must do the same. Hotel quarantine remains in place, covering around 24 designated countries. The reality of travelling in a pandemic. Conor Hunt, RTE News.
And we're joined now by the Chief Executive of the DAA, Dalton Phillips. Dalton, this has been an important day for you. You've been waiting for it for a long time. How's it gone?
Today's gone really well, actually. 22,500 people was our plan for today. Actually, we're going to see slightly more than that, David. Operationally, no issues at security, maximum 10-minute queue times, no issues in immigration, something we were worried about. You will have seen other airports across Europe really struggling. But actually here, the border management team have done an outstanding job and no major queues at all for people coming in. So team have done a great job and there's a real buzz about the place. Actually, the staff finally were focusing on something. This time last year, we focused around day zero, the beginning of July 2020, and nothing happened. We didn't go anywhere. But here we are now today, restrictions opened, and we've got 36 airlines flying to 130 destinations. It's a good day.
Okay, put that in context for us though. In a normal year, if COVID had never happened, how many people would you be seeing through the airport?
So this particular Monday, 2 years ago, we would have had 116,000 people go through the business. So we're still down 85%, but it's the build back that's key.
And how long is that going to take in your view? I mean, it's going to be a slow process as people gain confidence in the system and hopefully more people get vaccinated. But do you have any idea how long it will take to get back up to those numbers?
I think most commentators believe it's going to take 3 to 4 years. It's a really slow journey back. Now, clearly, we're going to see a lot more over the coming months, but it's going to be nothing like we had in the past. We're fortunate here in Ireland because we've got 2 home-based carriers in Ryanair, Aer Lingus. They're well capitalised, relatively speaking. But actually, to get back to 2019 numbers, 3, 4, 5 years.
What about connectivity? Because I know this is a worry for a lot of people in the airline business. There was other routes you would have been hoping to open up had COVID not happened. And getting the routes that you've lost back is going to be a battle, isn't it?
It's a tremendous challenge. So if you think pre-COVID, Dublin would have been connecting to 200 airports around the world. Today it's at 130, and it's getting from 130 back to 200, which is going to be the challenge. So just before the pandemic hit, we were having flights from places like Dallas just joined the map, Tel Aviv, Shanghai was just coming on stream. Now we've lost those. And in many cases, it can take years to get them back. The gestation period of working with the airlines to convince them to come into Dublin, it's hard. If you think about Dublin, the catchment area is about 7 million if you take the whole island. We're competing against Manchester or Brussels. They'd have 25 million people in their 2-hour drive time. So it's very hard to convince airlines to come in. We're going to need a combined approach of governments, so ministers on planes with the IDA, Enterprise Ireland, Fulcher Ireland, ourselves obviously going out there and wooing these airlines back.
Dublin's one thing, Cork is another, and other regional airports. Are they going to face more challenges than Dublin will?
Well, I think it's very difficult for the regional airports, and it's going to take time as well, 3, 4, 5 years to get those airlines back. If you take Cork, we've got 20 routes at the moment served by 6 airlines, but it's a long way from where it was. And I think for the big airlines, they'll want to first of all establish a strong presence in Dublin, and then they'll be looking at the other regional airports, which is something like in Cork's example, we're actually going to close Cork later this year for 10 weeks, and we're going to rehabilitate the runway, renew the runway, spend 40 million, getting it ready for next year. And I think it's all about being ready to go out and attack again the market.
As it takes off, you'll pardon the appalling pun. Dalton Phillips, Chief Executive of the DAA, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
It's been the busiest day for months in ports and airports with the lifting of an array of travel restrictions. Ireland has begun implementing the EU digital COVID certificate while more people are able to travel from the UK and US without isolating on arrival. On this programme, the head of the airport operator, the DAA, said that while today was a good day, it will take up to 5 years for air travel here to return to 2019 levels.
New COVID-19 restrictions are being implemented around Europe as many countries battle rising infection numbers. Much of the blame lies with the highly transmissible Delta variant, which has taken hold in recent weeks.
Scenes that have been admired from afar for so long are now back on the cards, but there are limits. Barcelona and other cities in northeastern Spain have reimposed a nighttime curfew between 1 and 6 a.m. as authorities try and discourage social gatherings on the streets, beaches and in parks, including at popular resorts like Sitges and Salou, in a bid to fight a surge in virus cases.
I think it's a good news to protect the people here in Barcelona.
While Spain's Canary Islands refused to implement similar measures, holidaymakers on Greece's party island Mykonos will have no option but for a quiet night in. A 5-hour night curfew has been implemented, along with a ban on bars, clubs and restaurants from playing music.
But yeah, it sucks a little bit.
While it's the spread of the Delta variant causing concern there, it's the Beta variant, first identified in South Africa, that's ringing alarm bells in France. Vaccine health passes are required for entry to most public places, as new infections have jumped in recent weeks.
The main thing is, please check the country you're going to. There are going to be national restrictions, there are going to be local restrictions. The more information you have before you go, the better equipped you are to deal with the situation on the ground. One of the things that you have to remember is almost every country has a locator form. As of today, you can travel unrestricted, but only if you have the full course of vaccination plus 2 weeks, or if you're under 12 years of age. There's been a convergence around about 12 years of age. The bit in the middle, there are still terms and conditions, but they aren't that complicated. There's been a convergence that antigen tests are what are required by most of the places we like to go, and a PCR test will be required on return. Huge amount of the documentation and complications comprised into that one QR code. All they really need is a number and an address to find you at. Also bear in mind that the airlines have quite different policies. One of our major airlines, Ryanair, likes people to bring bags on board. They think that fewer people handling bags is a good idea. Aer Lingus don't want people bringing bags on board. They think that getting on board and getting off again should be a faster process. So that's a big difference between our two major airlines. And some of the other original complications like security at airports, all of those, they're still in place. People are forgetting those.
And even though Ireland has opened up travel to the US, a taste of the likes of LA is still off the holiday menu, as most non-US citizens are still banned from entering the country. Jackie Fox, RTE News.
Well, we're joined here at Dublin Airport by Enda Corneal, who's country manager with the international airline Emirates. Enda, thanks for joining us. We heard earlier from Aer Lingus and from Ryanair. They're obviously benefiting from the EU digital COVID certificate. Different story for long-haul guys like you.
Yeah, but the digital certificate doesn't directly impact Emirates, but if it gets people flying, we'll benefit from it. And really, today is such an important day in taking the first step to removing the stigma around international travel. It isn't just about holidays, it's reuniting families, it's people travelling for work. So it's all about confidence now and building that confidence with the consumer. It's safe to travel and really to tell their friends, tell their family. I think it'll be the conversation piece of the summer. Where did you go? How did you get on? And that's going to build confidence and build numbers.
What sort of number of flights were you doing and are you doing now?
So we were operating a double daily service to Dubai and onwards to about 150 points. Up to a few weeks ago, we were at 3 flights. We're now at 5. We're hoping to get to daily in the next couple of months. But it's really, I suppose, down to demand on the one hand and important markets that are still closed to us, such as Australia and New Zealand. And until they open, we can't realistically get back to that schedule.
Okay, and nobody knows how long it's going to be before they open. I think Australia in particular will be very reluctant to do so.
Unfortunately. I mean, Phuket opened last week. Bangkok is opening in September. We're doing a lot of business into Dubai, into the Maldives. So there's a good spread of destinations, but the real volume will be Australia.
Do you think people are going to be reluctant, particularly about long-haul flights, about being stuck in an aeroplane for hours and hours and hours? People might just have a different view of that because of COVID.
I don't think so. I think the genie's out of the bottle on travel. If you take Dubai, for example, it's only a couple more hours on the aircraft from the Canaries. It's one stop, and pre-COVID, people were doing weekends in New York. I think people have a taste for travel. They'll want to get back to it as quickly as they can.
Okay, Enda Corneal, country manager with Emirates. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.